Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here, and earlier this week Apple released macOS Sequoia 15.5 along with macOS Sonoma and Ventura security updates. If you have an unsupported Mac running OpenCore Legacy Patcher, we've got a brand new version available, 2.4.0. In this video we're going to go over everything new in this update, and we're also going to install it on a record 19 unsupported different model Macs. And we're also going to cover new in this video macOS Sonoma, macOS Ventura, macOS Monterey, and macOS Big Sur for everyone that's not on the latest version, because there's a lot of you out there and we need to be able to cover that. We also have some unfortunate casualties that delayed this video, and we're going to go over all that and more next. Before we started the video, I wanted to go over a quick update on the status of this video and why it took a little longer than normal, and for what I've been working on and what I've been thinking about. When I put out these videos, I try to do this for you, because sometimes I think about all the people out there that are running OpenCore Legacy Patcher on their unsupported Mac, and some of you just have one machine. So when you go to install, you are thinking about whether you should make that jump or not because you only have one device. I'm lucky enough to have built this wonderful supply of machines over the years. I've fixed many of them from being dead. I have been donated some from you as a viewer. I've picked up some of these from the Vintage Computer Fest Midwest for $5 a piece and fixed them up. And I'm saying that because it's not like I've bought all these brand new. I always have value at the top of my list for you as a viewer. I try to make everything as affordable as possible because not everybody has all the money in the world to buy a new machine. If you do, that's wonderful. And that's why I cover the newer OS versions for supported Mac. But when we get to this, we're talking machines all the way back to 2008, 2009, 2010, for example. So I want to run it through on my fleet before you install it on yours. And that's the whole point of this video. I also want to do it for new users and for advanced users because there's always something going on. The questions that I see in the comments and in the chat and in social media, there's a lot of questions out there, and they're all very important questions. And I want to make sure I try to cover all that. That's why I do a full walkthrough on installing the patch and showing you it working on these devices, and hopefully at least one of these devices matches your device. I also wanted to maybe slow these videos down a little bit instead of just trying to race through them, do more of a conversation with you as the viewer. Because I think that's important, building the relationship between me and you watching this video. That's why I also want to do this capture like this, where you see what I'm working on, because even though the capture on a screen capture is really clear, I feel like there's not a connection there. So let me know in the comments how you feel about a couple of things that I've said and the style of these videos and what you're looking for in these videos, because I always like to read the feedback and go from there. Now, a quick update on, unfortunately, we've got some casualties here, as I mentioned earlier in the video. The first thing you might have missed is my 30-inch Apple HD cinema display that I absolutely love. I got that in an amazing story at the free pile at the Vintage Midwest Computer Show, one of my favorite shows. If you ever get a chance to go there, you would die and go to heaven there. And I was standing with a friend, Steve Mac84, at the free pile, and all of a sudden, at my feet, a guy comes up and drops the 30-inch display right at, I dove like it was a fumble in the Super Bowl, and I grabbed that thing. I was like, it's mine! I love this! And I've been looking for one of those monitors forever. The reason why I was put it there is because it was missing the power supply, and the power supply for the 30 is pretty expensive on eBay. That's why it was dumped there. And it was in bad condition, and it was in unknown working condition. So my friend Colin, Boss Dude, put together a video that shows how to use a third-party power supply. And I've been using this here for a while now, and unfortunately, we had a complete failure. Let's see if we can zoom in on this. I don't know if you can see that or not, but we can see some burn marks here, and we had a complete blowout. These two heat-sinked resistors both blew out. I don't know if the fan failed and it overheated, but well, you can see some of the damage inside the case here. So I talked to him about it, and he mentioned that the one he used, it's been a really reliable, did not come with the fan, so I placed an order for that. Hopefully we can get our cinema display back in the next video, and hopefully it still works even after that failure. Now the next casualty on the list is a 17-inch MacBook Pro battery. I don't know if you can see this. but it had a complete bulge here, and these batteries don't last forever. This is an Apple OEM battery, and it bulged the trackpad. I pulled it out, and the trackpad couldn't be clicked, and that's why. That is not good, and you want to be able to dispose of this battery properly because you don't want it to explode. So that took out one of the machines, and unfortunately we lost one of our early 2011 17-inch MacBook Pros. This might be a complete GPU failure. I'm not totally sure. When you power it up, you get a chime, no screen, no keyboard action, no USB keyboard action, and just a white sleep light here. I tried multiple troubleshooting on here. I tried different memory. I tried PRAM, SMC, all that kind of stuff. Didn't respond to it, unfortunately. So we might have a parts machine. It's just said, send your good wishes to our old trusty early 2011 17-inch glossy MacBook Pro. May you live on in parts in another machine. And we had one more failure. We have our server-based 2011 Mac Mini that completely failed on the update to 15.5, and this is hardware related. It got memory beep, 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 and then wouldn't display on the screen, locked up. Tried swapping the memory, tried resetting everything. I tried it all, and I think that guy's a goner too. So with all the failures, that's why the video took a little bit of time to get out. And sorry if I went on and on about some of the hardware, but that's what was some of the delay, and it just seems like everything was going wrong in this particular update. So that's why we're a little bit late here. So if we look at the latest GitHub, we can see that 2.4.0 was released 4 days ago for the older unsupported devices for macOS Monterey and macOS Big Sur. Those devices are not receiving any more Apple updates. So if you're running a previous version and your Monterey or Big Sur system is running well, then it's okay to remain on an older version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher. But that's why it's also important to read the release notes, because just because a lot of the fixes in the latest version support macOS, Sequoia, and some of the issues, that doesn't mean that there is a security fix for previous releases that you might want to be able to install to protect your device. But that's why we got to go over these to make sure you're not missing that. But if there isn't anything like that in newer releases, then it's okay to stay on that previous release. I also wanted to talk about really quickly some of the comments that I've seen where you're on a pretty far back operating system version. I saw someone mention in the comments on Reddit that they were on macOS Sequoia 15.0.0. And again, I'm not going to tell anybody what operating system you should install on your Mac, but the very first version of the operating system is usually like fresh, hot off the presses and has multiple bugs in it. And by now, about a month or so away from WWDC and macOS 16, there's a lot of fixes that are done in behind the scene. So if you're on some of the older versions like 15.1, 15.2, or 15.3, then I do recommend getting updated to the latest version because there's a lot of fixes in the operating system. The same thing with macOS Sequoia and macOS Ventura. If you're running an older version there, you're getting the security updates for macOS and Safari to keep your Mac secure, and that's the whole point. You're getting newer features and you're keeping your Mac secure. So now that we got that out of the way, let's go over some of the new fixes and improvements in 2.4.0. Let's take a look at some of the highlights of the 2.4.0 update. With the release of OpenCore Legacy Patcher 2.4.0, this version will primarily focus on macOS 15.5 support, with some additional general improvements. The first one, resolve Apple Pay airing on T1 Macs in 15.5. So if you have a 2016-2017 T1 Mac and you use Apple Pay, this is a good fix for you. Resolve Core Auth A airing on T1 Macs in 14.4 or later. Also resolve USB camera support on USB 1.1 Macs in 15.0 or later. So if you're using any kind of camera on those Macs, let me know if this fixes it for you. I don't have a USB camera, but I do know that the camera does work, and I've tested it inside the operating system. Also reduce CPU usage on UI thread in GUI. I had to reach out to Makola to ask him a little bit more about this, and we can see that down here in the changelog, and we can see here a little bit more information. And what that means is that when we open up the OpenCore Legacy Patcher application, it was rewriting the application GUI when a progress bar was on the screen and running up the CPU on the application. continue on with the full change logs, we got the full T1 2 fixes on there, and then the camera support, and we got patcher support binary 1.9.5 release. We also wanted to talk about, if you missed this in my previous video, you'll notice that the application and the assets download is now gone. That is fully deprecated to download the app only. The fully supported version now is to download the OpenCore Patcher installer package. And if you need to remove OpenCore Legacy Patcher from your Mac, download the uninstaller package, run that, and that's fully removed. Now keep in mind, that does not remove the EFI from the device. That's a separate uninstall process, and that's listed on the OpenCore Legacy Patcher information page. Now remember, don't ever download this. There's been questions about this. This is just the assets that are needed by OpenCore Legacy Patcher that are downloaded from the patcher. You do not need to download and install this. I also wanted to take a second to talk about compatibility. You heard me talk about compatibility in previous videos, but I want to make sure that I cover it and mention this. And what I mean by compatibility, I'm talking about stability, how fast the operating system is on your older hardware, and stuff like that. For example, if you're looking for a very stable system, I recommend macOS Sonoma until macOS Sequoia is in full maintenance mode. What I mean by that is that when macOS 16 comes out, and they no longer are releasing feature changes or major changes to the operating system, and we might even be close to that already with 15.5. We are probably going to get one more big update at 15.6, and then it'll go into security maintenance mode. When that happens, all the energy will be put into macOS 16, and then not as many changes are going to be happening to previous operating systems like macOS Sonoma and macOS Ventura right now. Those are very stable operating systems that are working very well. I understand the push or the idea that you want to try out the latest operating system, and that's totally fine. Give it a shot. You can dual boot. You can run macOS Sequoia on one and macOS Sonoma on the other, and that's totally fine. But if you want a very stable, quick system, I fully recommend macOS Ventura or macOS Sonoma for your system. If you're running a newer device like the 2017 that I've got here, a 2016 or a 15 MacBook Pro, that's totally fine. But again, you have to feel that mix on the changes that are happening compared to the more stable operating systems. Now, supporting the patcher and the developers, I always mention this on my videos. If you ever have the means, and what I mean by that is that if you're not in the position to make any donations, don't worry about that. But if you are, and you would like to be able to support the developers, there is ways to be able to support the developers and be able to get hardware for over 83 different models that they do their testing on, and you can find that link in the description below. Okay, our first demonstration here is going to show you how to update OpenCore Legacy Patcher to the latest version of 2.4.0 and install the latest version of macOS Sequoia 15.5 on your Mac. This demonstration Mac here is our 2017 15-inch MacBook Pro, and we immediately are greeted by the update window. Now this can happen two ways. This can happen if you just start up your Mac from fresh and it kicks off the check for update and it will display, or if you open up the OpenCore Legacy Patcher application, it'll also check for updates. If for some reason you're running an older version and you do not get that message, that's okay. You can go to the GitHub, download the package installer, and install that, and then you're fully up to date on 2.4.0. So if we go back in here, we'll get the update message again. When we see that, it's very simple. We can follow this link to get to the GitHub, like I said, to download it manually right here, and then scroll down, and then there's your package installer of the latest version. But the easiest way to do it, if you already have the working version on your system, is to follow the full automated install process by clicking the download and install, and then it'll fully download the latest version, install it, and upgrade your version to the latest version. So we'll open it up again, and there we are. And we can also see that we are on 2.3.2, and we're going to update to 2.4.0. So let's click download and install. And there it is. It's going to download the latest version. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is that if you ever see that OpenCore Legacy Patcher is a little bit slower to load or close or quit, That's because it has to load the assets. Remember I mentioned the assets? If you open disk utility, every time you open up OpenCore Legacy Patcher, it opens a disk image of all the patches files that it needs right here. So if it takes a second to close, that's because it has to unload this. So when you're not using the application, the files are not needed or mounted anymore. So if you close OpenCore Legacy Patcher, that will be ejected. So we'll close that, and that's the slight delay. So this is almost done downloading, and we'll let it install here. And there it goes. And we can see where the application is in Library, Application Support, and Dortania. And we'll see that fully update to May 16th once the update is complete. There it is, today at 5:58 p.m. The update is installed, and the update is successful. What's nice is from here, this is where you're given the opportunity to do what I always call the three-step process. If you want to update OpenCore Legacy Patcher, there's 3 steps. Step 1, update the application. Step 2, build and install OpenCore to your EFI partition on the drive to boot from, to the latest version. And then step 3 is install the latest root patches, which include Wi-Fi drivers, acceleration drivers for graphics, and all that stuff. So what it's saying to us is that the application is done, but do you want to update OpenCore and the root volume patches also? And yes, usually, again, if you're running a supported system, macOS Ventura, macOS Sonoma, and macOS Sequoia, I fully recommend to be on the latest version just in case there's a compatibility issue with the latest update. So for example, 15.5, 13.6.7, and 14.6.7 security updates. So we'll click on yes, and it's going to build it, and then we're going to install it to our EFI partition. After selecting it from the local disk, we'll select our hard drive here and our EFI partition. It'll mount it up here, there it is. It's copying the new version there, and then it's going to unload it, and it's done. Now, the final step, step 3, is to install the latest version of the root patches, yes. Now again, this might seem counterintuitive because we're installing the patches first before we install the update. But the reason why I like to do that is to make sure 2.4.0 is working on your current system first. If we install this version here and we notice there's an issue, why even waste the time to go to 15.5? We got to figure out what's going on the current version of 15.4.1, for example. But if we install everything now and everything's working great, we know that we can make the jump to 15.5 or the security update for Sonoma or Ventura. And if a problem happens there, we can then look at the latest version of the operating system as being the problem. So now in this menu, you can see which patches that are required for this 2017 15-inch MacBook Pro. AMD Polaris, modern wireless patches, and T1 security chip patches. Also can see the last time we root patched on the system was April 19th at 2.3.2. Let's start the root patching process. And there we go. If your device needs the kernel debug kit or the MetaLib package, that will be downloaded now. But since we are remaining on the same operating system that we were before, we can see that we already have the KDK on the system here, and it's just unpacking what it already has. So if we go into our hard drive and then we click on Library, Developer, KDK, we are on 15.4, and there was no kernel debug kit for 15.4.1. So the 15.4 is the one it's using for this particular system. And then it's building with the patches right here. There you go. It is applied the patches. Now all we need to do is reboot. We'll click on Reboot and Restart. Okay, we're back in. Now we can go double check the version. We can make sure we're on the latest version of OpenCore and the application is updated. We can click on Post Install Root Patch and see that we have all applicable patches installed with the latest version and today's date. And we can go into Settings and we can go into the App tab here and then scroll down, and we can see that we are on OpenCore release 104 or 104. So we are good to go. with the full patched system. Now we can move on to updating to macOS Sequoia 15.5. Okay, now that we have OpenCore Legacy Patcher updated to the latest version, 2.4.0, and the EFI and post-install root patches, now it's time to update your Mac to the latest version of macOS. So in this case, if you're on Ventura 13.7.6, Sonoma 14.7.6, and Sequoia 15.5. So open up System Settings, and we'll click on Software Update, and we should see the updating here. Now, if you're on Sonoma or Ventura, you might see Sequoia up here. But down here is where you'll see the update for just the individual operating system. And here is the important part where I have to say it again, because remember, it's being turned on again automatically for some systems, is that you have to go into the automatic updates or look here. It'll say security responses are download and install updates right here. But if you want to double check, click on this I right here and make sure that download new updates and install macOS updates are disabled. If you see them on, turn them off right now. So the next time the operating system new update comes out that doesn't automatically install, then you run into the version mismatch error. So now we know that, now we can update to 15.5. Now keep in mind, I've seen some comments talking about the size of the update. The size of the update is going to be close to the full installer size. So in this case, it is 15.62 gigabytes. That's normal, but that's not normal for supported systems. Supported systems will be from anywhere from 600 to 4 to 5 gigabytes. So this is only for unsupported systems with OpenCore Legacy Patcher, and that's totally normal. So we'll click on Update Now. And I always usually recommend making sure you have a fresh backup no matter what you're doing when you install a software update. Make sure you're running a time machine, or you have a USB hard drive or something like that where all your files are backed up, because again, the update can fail even for supported systems. So you want to just make sure you're good to go. We'll click on Agree, and then we'll start to download. Now, what we should also see is, since this 2017 15-inch MacBook Pro requires a kernel debug kit, we see that OpenCore Legacy Patcher has detected that, and we'll see that it says, hey, we're seeing that you're installing an update, and we need to prepare and download an update. So that's either the MetaLab support package or the kernel debug kit, and there it is. KDK 24F74 for macOS Sequoia 15.5, and that's normal. Now, if you don't see this going and popping up like normal, like you normally see, there could be a problem. So what I would do is I would stop this update, I would reboot and try again. Now, in some circumstances, as I've mentioned before, the kernel debug kit is not even out yet. So in that case, you have to wait a day or two until Apple releases it. Then you'll see it install. It's okay though, because remember, usually 1 or 2 versions behind is okay and compatible. But you still usually want to try to be on the latest version of the KDK. So we'll let this download and finish. You can check to see if you have the latest KDK or it's available by going to this GitHub site here, and I'll put this link in the description below. And you can see here all of the different versions of the kernel debug kit that is uploaded to the Dortania GitHub here. And there it is, 15.5 build 24F74. Now, if you don't see that version of it, and you'll also see the latest here, that'll show up. Now, if there's an update that comes out, like previous updates, like 15.4.1, they didn't have a KDK that came out with it, and that's okay, because 15.4 was compatible. But this can be the little bit of a confusing part, especially when they don't release a KDK. So we'll let this finish downloading here, and what it's going to do is prepare the update. We'll let the update prepare, it's going to reboot, and it's going to come back up, and we'll pick up right where it left off. Okay, we're back up after installing the 15.5 update on this 15-inch 2017 MacBook Pro. Now this is where things get a little dicey for older devices. And what I mean by that is that sometimes when you come back directly up after an update, the screen is totally black, or it's really super slow, like you're trying to click in there, or it doesn't show the login window. Hit enter a couple times to see if you can get it to come up, and if it does, then you can try to type in your password like this, and if it does go, then just hit enter. Give it a second, because remember, we don't have any graphics acceleration at this point because the root patches are not installed. So give the Mac a little bit of time to be able to log in properly, and then usually you'll hit the desktop. Now, if for some reason that doesn't work and it's still on the black screen, it's really slow and you can't do anything, it's okay to power it down. Power it down, let it come back up, and it usually is a lot quicker on that second reboot when it comes back up. And then you can log in like this, and then you should be able to install the root patches. Once you get in, as you can see, we're in here super fast because we're on one of the newest versions available that's no longer supported on macOS Sequoia in 2017. Now, once we get back to the desktop, we can see, and we should see, that OpenCore Legacy Patcher has started up in the background from the launch daemon and said, hey, we've detected that there's no root patches on your system and we would like to install them. Graphics AMD Polaris, modern wireless, and a T1 security chip. Would you like to apply these patches? Yes, we would. If you don't see this, give it some time. The older the system is, the slower it is for this automatic system to come back up. Sometimes it can take up to 30 seconds or even a minute on older devices. Let it pop up, and as long as it does, you can kick this off. When it says fetching the KDK database, what it's actually doing is it's installing the KDK from the package in library, developer, KDK. And you can see in here that we have the 15.5 KDK, and when it's done installing, it'll have a little folder there. That means the installation is finished, and then it can take the files and build the root patches. So we'll give it a little bit of time. And again, the older the system is, the longer it'll take to actually do this part of the kernel debug kit install to get all the files off. So again, give it time to be able to do this, and we'll be able to move forward from there. And there it goes. You can see that the folder was created here now, and then now we can merge the KDK with the root patches. KDK found, 15.5, good to go. So let that go. Now, if that automatic window does not come up, that's okay. You can go to Applications, fire up OpenCore Legacy Patcher, and then click this, Install Post-Root Patches. It'll go through the same process, and it'll patch you up, and it'll ask for a reboot. Really quick here, on some systems, it requires you to install just the wireless patches first. And that's why some people have said, I installed the root patches, but the system's still slow. I see a white background or a black background, and it's running really, really slow. That's because only the Wi-Fi drivers were installed, so you get the KDK or the MetaLib support package if you didn't get it, because now you have wireless access. If that happens, all you need to do is install the post-root patch a second time, then it'll install. But that's why you have to look at that window to tell you what parts of the patches are being installed. For example, the AMD graphics drivers. That's how you know the entire suite is being installed. So there we go. We are done applying the root patches. We can click on Reboot now and restart. If the restart hangs like this, make sure you try to close the OpenCore Legacy Patcher application. Sometimes it gets stuck. Make sure that closes first, then you can restart. Because remember what I said earlier is that it has to load that package assets, and then it has to also eject them before it closes the application. So wait for this to reboot, and it'll come right back up. Let's use this time to get a poll from the audience. What are you installing OpenCore Legacy Patcher on? I like to see all the different types of Macs in the comments, whether it's a 2010 27-inch iMac or a 2016 MacBook. I always love to see the large variety of Macs and what OS you're installing. That's why in this video we're going to be covering the previous operating systems, Sonoma, Ventura, Monterey, and Big Sur, because from what I've been seeing in the comments, there's still a lot of you out there and you want to be able to see how the update installs. Let's log back in. Hit that clicky keyboard there. I'm using the screen sharing application to connect to the MacBook Pro next to me here. I can bring it into view here. And I have a dongle through Ethernet and power, and then I can give a really nice view of what's going on here. So there you go. We are fully up and running. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is after every update, even for supported systems, if the system's running still a little bit slower, you hear some fans like you do here, it's got to run through a lot of operations after an operating system update. For example, it updates Spotlight Index and does a lot of other maintenance tasks. So give it a couple minutes, maybe 5 to 10 minutes to do all those tasks. Then you should hear the fans start to come down a little bit, and then the system should be ready to use. If you want to be able to open up OpenCore Legacy Patcher to verify that the patch is installed properly, you can do so by clicking Post Install Root Patch, and then it should show you that all the applicable patches are already installed, 2.4.0, today, May 17th. And there you go, the full walkthrough of downloading and installing the new app, installing and building OpenCore, installing the root patches, installing the macOS software update, and then applying the post-root patches after. Now let's jump in and talk about some of these machines here on our 19 different Mac models. Okay, let's go on to taking a look at some of the fleet of Macs here. I realized by looking at the time that we've already been recording here that we have to pick up the speed a little bit because we're already way over. So I wanted to get into some of the comments. I wanted to get deeper into some of these machines, but we're going to have to do that in the next video. But first of all, we've got our mini 12-inch MacBook here, beautiful little device, and we're running 15.5 and 2.4.0. We've got Intel Skylake graphics, modern wireless PCIe FaceTime camera. We were last running 2.3.2. We do not have a kernel debug kit or the MetalLib support package on this Mac. It's a very specific build, and that's why I go over and pick these different devices, because everyone is a little bit different in its installation. But we do get our system extension update boxes that pop up, and that's okay. You can see the Skylake frame buffer. You can click on OK when those come up when you're installing the root patches. They're totally normal, and once you reboot and it comes back up, those will be gone. So that's our early 2016 12-inch MacBook. Next up is our Retina 5K 27-inch late 2015 iMac. On this device, we're running 15.5 and 2.4.0. We have Intel Skylake, AMD Legacy GCN, modern wireless patches, and we do need the kernel debug kit, which you can see here. Everything is running very well on this iMac, no issues whatsoever. We've got a brand new piece of hardware to add to our fleet, a mid 2015 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. We added this one to the fleet because of its very particular need of both the MetalLib support package and a KDK. So when we look, we have Intel Haswell, Legacy GCN, modern wireless, and PCIe FaceTime camera. So this machine has to download both. It'll first start with the KDK, as we can see right here for 15.5, and then it'll also download the Metal support package along with that. And both of those have to be installed for this system to be able to run. And it's a very particular system, and that's why we added it to the fleet. But with those both installed, this system is running very well with no issues on 2.4.0 and 15.5. Next up on the list is our MacBook Air 11-inch, early 2014. This little guy is just like our 12-inch MacBook, really cool little laptop. We were running 2.4.0, and we had to install on the 15.5 Intel Haswell graphics, modern wireless, and PCIe FaceTime camera. We also needed the MetalLib support package for 15.5, and we can see that in here, 15.5, everything in this install worked very well, and the MacBook's running very well. Now, if you haven't seen me mention this before, you can see how this machine is obviously not connected to power and not Ethernet, and you can see the wireless looks like it's grayed out, but that's just a little bit of a bug in Sequoia. And OpenCore Legacy Patcher, just click on it once, and then re-click on it again, and then it will update and show that you're fully connected. So this machine is running very well. Next up is our host Mac that we're using to do all our work on, is our 2013 Trash Can Mac Pro. We are running 2.4.0 and 15.5. We did need the kernel debug kit. That downloaded fine. We can see that that's right here, and this machine is running very well. And I gotta tell you, if you're looking for a desktop, these things are going for cheap on eBay right now. It's unbelievable how the prices drop. So take a look at this machine if you're looking for a desktop. Next up is our early 2013 15-inch Retina MacBook Pro. Now, if you've been watching my videos, you know that this thing is a pain in the butt, and this is why we try to test all these different models. This one's a pain because Kepler has a problem with software update in macOS Sequoia, loading the update pane properly. So if we go into General, we click on software update, what'll happen here is it'll sometimes check forever and never show. Or if it'll find the update, then it'll say that we can install, but you click install, nothing happens. It's getting better. With this update, I was able to click install and it'll show the progress, but the progress wouldn't move. The progress would be the smallest little bar here. Now, what you want to do is that technically in the background, it is actually downloading and it's preparing the update. And it'll give you a prompt to reboot, but it won't finish. It'll come back up. It'll be a white screen because now the root patches are messed up, but it'll let you install the update properly. Now, I mentioned in the past, you can try running the software update binary in terminal, software update list, and then installing it that way. You can also uninstall the root patches, let it come back up, but the problem is it's not the full update. So there's no guarantee that it will install properly. What I mean by that is that since the root patches are not installed, it'll detect that it can install the Delta update, which is anywhere between 1.5 gigs to 3 or 4 gigabytes, for example. And sometimes that has problems on its own. So after I did that and I let it reboot on its own, it came back up white screen. I clicked install software update again, it downloaded and it was able to install the 15.5. Let me know in the comments if you have a tip that you use on Kepler to be able to get the install going properly. We can always share that with users, and I love being able to interact with users with different tips that you've been able to use to be able to work on your OpenCore Legacy Patcher Mac. Now, one thing I mentioned earlier, and this is why we check these systems, look at this, automatic updates, macOS updates. So it was turned back on. We got to go in here again, click the I, which is not even a button, and turn this off. Look at this. So again, make sure you turn these off and it'll only show security responses. And that is, your gatekeeper and your X-Protect updates, and that's fine to download and install in the background to keep your Mac secure. So that's why we test all these different models, and we're testing to see, and that's why some of them are turned off and some of them are on. And that's why you got to double check. So that's our Kepler early 2013 MacBook Pro. Next up is our 13-inch mid-2012 MacBook Pro 9,1. This is the most popular Mac out of all the Macs that have OpenCore Legacy Patcher installed in it. And there's a big reason why. This was sold from 2012 all the way to 2016. It was sold as a budget Mac. It was sold as an education Mac. It was sold as one of the last Macs, or the last Macs, with a super drive DVD CD-ROM burner installed in it. So this was a universal machine that there's millions of these devices out there, and it's still a really great machine with metal support, and it runs very well. It does need the MetalLive support package, and we have Intel Ivy Bridge graphics and modern wireless networking patches, and 2.4.0 and 15.5 are working very well for this system. Up next is our mid-2011 27-inch iMac, and this is still a really good system. And when we talk about value, this is a really nice machine. It still runs very well, and the screen is very nice, crisp, and obviously not 5K, but still a wonderful monitor and computer. And we're running 2.4.0. We have Intel Sandy Bridge, AMD TeraScale 2, and Legacy Wireless. We have to install the kernel debug kit, and this system's running good except for our Wi-Fi. This is connected to Ethernet, and this machine has had a problem with Wi-Fi for the past couple updates. Now let me know if you have a 2011 27-inch iMac, whether your Wi-Fi is connecting. What I mean by that, if you see this, it's searching and hunting for the endpoint. So if you click on it, it sees it, and you'll try to click on it, and sometimes you can force it in and get it to connect, and it'll take a little while, but it will eventually connect, but it does struggle. Let me know if you see that, and that's just, again, why we go over all these different models. There's so many different configurations to worry about and double check and test, but it does show that we are connected now, and I think we've got an IP address. Let's double check. And we do have an IP address, so it should stop, and it is showing solid, but it should give it a second here and finish its search here, because again, we do have an IP address and we are fully connected now to the endpoint. So I've seen that stop the search after a while, but you got to give it some time. So other than that, this 2011 27-inch iMac is running very well. Let's welcome another new Mac to our testing fleet, a Mac Mini late 2014. And well, we added this one because it still has its original 1 terabyte spinning hard drive. No SSD in this guy. It's got 8 gigs of RAM, so it's got enough RAM, but it is limited to the speed of that 5400 RPM drive. And nope, do not recommend. That's why every single system that I have has an SSD installed and has good performance. But this thing, you start to do anything in it, there's a delay in everything that you do. You try to open up the drive and it does start to go, but it's a little bit slow, and you can see, look, it's even loading applications. Do not recommend. But if you want to test it out and see how it goes and you like what you can see and you want to be able to then upgrade to the SSD, that's what you can do. But we're running Intel Haswell Modern Wireless 240, but that's why I wanted to be able to bring one of these systems into the fleet with an old hard drive to show how important it is to have a SSD hard drive, and maybe at least 8 gigabytes of RAM is what I recommend. A couple of my systems run on 4 gigs, but this is why I recommend SSD and at least 8 gigs. Next up is our big guy, 17-inch late 2011 MacBook Pro. 15.5 and 240. We do need the kernel debug kit on this device, and we are running Intel Sandy Bridge and AMD TeraScale 2, but it is disabled in NVRAM and recovery because it has a failed GPU. Modern Wireless Legacy Keyboard Backlight, and this particular Mac was having issues with the login window crashing, and I have not seen that so far on the 15.5 system for this old guy. It's still running good. Next up is the king, the mid 2010 Mac Pro. We are running an upgraded AMD Polaris-based Radeon Pro WX 4100 Metal 2 graphics card. And we are also running updated Wi-Fi and Bluetooth to be able to get modern wireless. We also have to install the legacy USB 1.1 patches, and we are running on 2.4.0. We got our KDK. Everything's running great in this Mac Pro. It's been rock solid since the very beginning of macOS Sequoia. Next up is our oldest Mac, 2008 15-inch MacBook Pro, and this is where I fully recommend that. It's just because you can do it doesn't mean you should, but it can, and I want to show that it even to date with 15.5 it's still possible. We have our Nvidia Tesla, legacy wireless, legacy keyboard backlight, legacy USB 1.1 patches, and we needed the KDK 15.5, and we're on 2.4.0, but the system is slow. Everything that you try to navigate does definitely take a while, but it will load. It really does, but again, just trying to move around, see, it just takes time, right? And again, it does work, but it's running SSD, it's running 8 gigs of RAM, and it is doing the trick, but it definitely is slow. So there's our 2008 MacBook Pro. Next up is our beloved polycarbonate MacBook. And it is on and it's booting, but it's a casualty, and you can see that it's running because if we close the window, you hit the keyboard, nothing's happening. If we close the keyboard, we got our sleep light. And what's actually happening with this system is that we are crashing at the login window. And the reason why is because it has an incompatible EFI build. And you can actually see sometimes the cursor comes on here, and we confirm what's the problem is that after we install the macOS update, for macOS Sequoia 15.4.1, the system would no longer boot because it didn't have the latest version of EFI. So if we do power this thing up, we can see what version of OpenCore EFI we are running once we see it boot up here. We'll give it a second here. And there it is, OpenCore 101. It needs to be 104. So it'll boot, and it'll get to a certain point on the screen, and then it'll just crash at the login window. So that's gonna be a fix for another video because we're already over, but I wanted to show that's why our 2010 polycarbonate is out of commission. Next up, we're gonna cover the older operating systems. And let me know in the comments if you want me to be able to continue to support these and cover these older systems, because again, I know they're out there because I hear you. I hear that you're still on these older OSs, and I want to be able to cover them in strength here. So what we are going to do is cover 2 different versions of macOS Sonoma because it's still new. We're going to cover a metal supported Sonoma Mac and then non-metal supported Sonoma. Then we're going to cover a non-metal Ventura, non-metal Monterey, and non-metal Big Sur, because usually the non-metal systems are the ones that have the problems. Our first demonstration system here is a mid 2014 15-inch MacBook Pro. We're running 240 and 14.7.6 via Haswell, Nvidia Kepler, modern wireless, and PCIe FaceTime camera. Last update was 232. This does not require MetalLib support package because Sonoma doesn't need that, and it doesn't require a KDK. So this system is running very solid with no issues whatsoever. Next up for macOS Sonoma is our new addition to the fleet, early 2011 17-inch MacBook Pro with a beautiful matte display, and you can see it a little bit over here. And this system is set up and actually used some of the parts from our unfortunate failure of our 2011 17-inch glossy MacBook Pro with the failed logic board or graphics card GPU. And we transferred over the hard drive. This system is the one with the bad bulging battery, and now it's running wonderful. We're running 240 and we are running macOS Sonoma 14.7.6. We did need the kernel debug kit for this machine, and we are running Intel Sandy Bridge, AMD TeraScale 2, modern wireless, and a keyboard backlight. We do have the GPU disabled and NVRAM in recovery to turn off the graphics card because it has failed, and other than that, it's running very well for macOS Sonoma. Next up is macOS Ventura 13.7.6. We still do need the kernel debug kit on this system. That's the first time in the first OS where a kernel debug kit was required. We are running Intel Sandy Bridge, AMD TeraScale 2, and 2.4.0 on this MacBook Pro, non-metal, early 2011. Next up is macOS Monterey 12.7.6, and this is that threshold that I was talking about. macOS Monterey and macOS Big Sur are no longer supported by Apple, and there's no longer any software or security updates being released for them. So that's why when I talked about staying on the latest version, if you are running on a solid operating system version, the latest version 12.7.6 for example, and you're running an older version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher, that's fine. And I test the latest version just to make sure, if you are staying up to date, that everything's okay, and everything is. And we're running Intel Ivy Bridge and Nvidia Kepler, and we are last on 232, and 2.4.0 is running very well on this MacBook Pro. Last but not least is our 15-inch late 2011 MacBook Pro running macOS Big Sur 11.7.10, which was the final version. And again, just like macOS Monterey, this is no longer supported by Apple, but was the very first version supported by OpenCore Legacy Patcher way back years ago. And we are running Intel Sandy Bridge, AMD TeraScale 2, Legacy keyboard backlight on 2.4.0. This system is running very well, and just like I said on macOS Monterey, if you're running an older version of OpenCore Legacy Patcher and things are solid, don't worry about it. You can stay on that, or you can do the latest version like I'm doing, and that's why I test it now. I forgot to mention this in the Monterey video, but on the older versions of system preferences, when you go into software update, you'll see that there's an update here, and it looks the same for macOS Monterey. It changed in Ventura to system settings. You have to make sure that this is off here, and in advance, make sure that download new updates and install macOS updates is disabled in here, or you'll possibly get a download of macOS Sequoia on the system when you want to be able to stay on macOS Big Sur or macOS Monterey. And that's the video. If you have stuck it out all the way to the end of this video, and I wanted to include the user questions in the comments and answer some of those questions, and I wanted to do a more in-depth on each individual machine, but this video is already running way too long, so hopefully we can catch that in the next update video. But if you've made it all the way to the end of this video, you are a VIP Mr. Macintosh viewer. Put trash can in the comments below so I can see who you are. Thank you so much for watching this video and being a supporter of me and this channel. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. We will catch you in the next video. Thank you.